Hikaru is your average high schooler with terrible social anxiety and no idea what he wants to do with his life. He wakes up early one morning and after dragging himself out of bed, he heads to the train station and gets on the first train headed to his school, but there's something that has been bothering him for a while now. Last night, while he was riding his bike, he saw a mysterious orange light in the sky and heard a voice calling out to him, so he's trying to figure out what it could have been, but he hasn't found any information yet. As he is scrolling, he notices a pregnant woman standing in front of him, as well as two old ladies silently judging him for not giving his seat up to the pregnant woman. He feels like it'd be the right thing to do, so he gets up and is about to offer the pregnant woman his seat, but then he hears a couple of guys in the background making fun of him for being a goody two-shoes. But it turns out that he was just being paranoid and the two guys were talking about someone else. He is relieved once he realizes that they aren't talking about him, but while he was standing in place, the man next to him already got up and offered the pregnant woman his seat instead. So now, Hikaru is left awkwardly standing by himself, and he feels so embarrassed about it that he's about to get off the train, but all of a sudden, a couple of his classmates get on and spot him, so he now has to join them. Hikaru's friends begin talking about their future plans, but Hikaru hasn't actually been listening this entire time because he is still preoccupied with what happened last night. His friends ask him about it, so he explains that from what he remembers, he heard a voice late last night, but he opened his window to see what was going on and saw that the area around the Kagami building was really bright, and he wanted a better look, so he rode his bike up the hill to get a better view, but unknown to him at the time, a huge battle was taking place in the Kagami building and an orange cube was about to be stolen by a girl with robot arms attached to her hips. She tried to escape through the roof, but as soon as she got up there, she was immediately surrounded by the private police force of the building and they recognized her as a Mecha Uda user, so they immediately pulled out their weapons in an attempt to neutralize her, but those mechanical arms make her a difficult target to hit. After the police officers failed to stop her, the guards then pulled out specialized weapons and used them to freeze her in place. The boss then comes out and pulls out a mechanical creature of his own, but this one has been experimented on to make it a more efficient tool. The girl's mechanical arms are outraged by what the man did to one of their kind, but the man shows no remorse as he takes the cube back so he can use it in one of his future experiments. The girl refuses to let that happen. So with the help of the arms, Sinus and Dex, she breaks free from the trap and attacks the weapons developer. In the process of the fight, the girl manages to get the cube from the weapons developer, but because the containment tube was damaged, it ends up getting launched several hundred meters into the air. That was when Hikaru saw an explosion come from the building and he even took a video of it. But for some reason, nothing out of the ordinary was recorded. He also recalls seeing a glowing cube land somewhere near the building, but once again, none of that showed up on his recording. His friends think he must have just had a really weird dream last night, but out of curiosity, since he apparently heard a voice, they ask what kind of voice it was heard last night was, and Hikaru is embarrassed to say, but he tells them that the voice was asking for help. His friends joke that it may have been a ghost, but Hikaru knows what he heard, and coincidentally he hears that same voice again. So even though he's supposed to be attending class, he takes off running in an attempt to track the voice down. He ends up approaching the Kagami building, and he's not sure what he's meant to be looking for, but as he's about to enter a roped-off area, he is stopped by a police officer who tells him that he isn't allowed to be back here. Hikaru asks why, so the officer explains that Kagami made a generous donation to the police station in exchange for a couple of officers helping him with a little situation. But then he gets a message on his radio telling him that Mr. Kagami needs all the officers to head over to the back room, so the officer turns to head for the back, leaving the unknown kid near the restricted area. Hikaru was initially going to turn back since he is a law-abiding citizen, but as he is about to leave, he hears the voice again. So he decides to ignore the do not cross tape and goes searching for stuff in the abandoned section of the compound. He walks around for a while until he comes across an ominous glowing cube in the middle of the floor and he wonders if this is the thing that was calling out to him. He gets close to it and sure enough, the cube begins talking, which freaks him out a little, but he still reaches out to touch it, resulting in a massive flash of light. The cube flies up into the sky and lands on Hikaru's back, causing another flash of light and drawing a lot of attention. By the time Hikaru opens his eyes, he has a massive arm growing out his back, and the arm is really relieved to have finally been saved. Hikaru is hearing the voice of someone talking to him, but he can't see anyone, so he starts panicking until the arm gets his attention to calm him down. Seeing a metal arm growing out of his back does nothing to calm Hikaru down, but the arm begins to thank him because it is genuinely grateful to have been released from that cube. It tries to tell Hikaru its name, but it then realizes that it can't actually remember what its name is. Hikaru still can't handle the fact that he has an arm on his back, but then he realizes that the arm isn't actually attached to his back, it's just stuck to his jacket. Before he can think of what to do next, a drone shows up to investigate the area, and that leads Hikaru to believe that the robot arm must belong to the Kagami group, and he doesn't want to get in any trouble, so he starts taking off his jacket so he can return it, but the drone engages its buzzsaws and tries to kill him. Hikaru begins running for his life, and he thinks the drone is after him because of the mechanical arm, so when he falls over, he tries to return the arm so he doesn't get attacked anymore, but it turns out that the drone is specifically trying to kill him, so the arm has to step in and defend him. Hikaru is traumatized from the near-death experience, and he has no idea what the murder drone would be targeting him instead of the arm, but the arm tells him that they don't have any time to relax because even more drones are on their way, and the only way he is going to make it out of here alive is if they work together. Meanwhile, at the Kagami headquarters, the president has just been informed that the drones have located the missing trigger arm, but it seems to be in the possession of a random kid. One of the higher-ups asks if the boy is affiliated with the ARMS organization, but according to their background check, he really is just a random kid that happened to find it, so the higher-up orders a 2-kilometer perimeter to be formed so he can't escape, and for all available forces to be focused on capturing the trigger arm. He doesn't really care what happens to the kid, though. At the same time, Hikaru and the arm have evaded detection by the drones, and while Hikaru is grateful to be safe, he still wants an explanation as to what the arm is and why he is being hunted because of it. The arm unfortunately doesn't remember anything, so it can't answer Hikaru's questions, but something it does know is that Hikaru is a kind person for saving it. Normally, the arm wouldn't be able to move at all without Arbitrium, but with Hikaru, it's got buttery smooth joints. Hikaru congratulates it on its freedom, but he's not going to be getting involved anymore and opts to leave the arm behind, along with his jacket. It should be fine since the arm can move on its own, but the arm begs him not to go and tries warning him that it isn't safe out there. The way Hikaru sees it, he is only in danger because of the arm, so distancing himself from it would be the best way to ensure his safety, and he intends to do exactly that. However, he notices that the further he gets, the quieter the arm gets, and as he turns around, he sees that the arm has almost completely lost power. After a bit of testing, he confirms that the arm really does lose power every time he gets too far away, and that means for better or worse, he's stuck with the arm. The drones eventually catch up to them, but this time the arm says he will handle it himself, so it grabs the floor and begins dragging Haruka around to get him away from the drones. While the arm is doing this, the weapons developer is watching from a nearby water tower, and he is quite disappointed that the trigger arm turned out to be so pathetic, but he still needs to retrieve it, so he will let the drones handle it. More importantly, he receives intel that he's not the only one after the trigger arm, so he's going to have to deal with that girl again. Meanwhile, Aki has just arrived in the area, but her intel provider tells her that she is heading in the wrong direction. He tells her to go south, but she doesn't know which way is south, so he rephrases it and says she should turn right instead. She needs to get to the other side of the building, but going back would take too long, so she finds a little alleyway and intends to go through there instead, although she's going to have to ask her Dex and Sinis to disengage for now so she can fit. On the other side of the wall, Hikaru is running out of steam from being chased for so long, and while the arm's running was definitely faster, it drained a lot of Hikaru's energy, so he can't keep going much longer. All of a sudden, he gets grabbed by Aki and is thrown to the floor while she deals with drones. She then turns to the two, calling the arm Alma and threatening to kill both of them if they move. Dex reminds her that her job is to protect them, not kill them, but before Dex can properly explain things to Hikaru, the weapons developer shows up and he's still holding a grudge against Aki for stealing Alma from him, so he's going to make her pay. While the two are distracted arguing with one another, Hikaru notices an alleyway behind him, so he makes a run for it. Aki notices him shimmying away, but she is too wide to go after him with her mecha Yude, so she's stuck dealing with the weapons developer on this side of the wall. On the other side, Hikaru makes it out and starts running again. He is really starting to regret making the decision to come here. The arm sees how much Hikaru is struggling, so it tells him to stop and leave him behind. Those guys that are chasing them are only after Alma, so if Hikaru leaves him behind, he should be able to escape unharmed. Even if Alma is right, Hikaru knows Alma can't move without him, so he is hesitant to abandon him. Aki has just defeated the weapons developer and she's caught up to them, so she once again threatens to hurt them if they don't comply with her demands. Alma tells her to wait and says he will listen to her demands as long as she lets Hikaru go, but Hikaru says he's not going anywhere. He may regret the decision, but he is choosing to stick by Alma's side, and since he looks like he's going to resist, Aki prepares to beat him into submission. Hikaru isn't confident in his ability to win, but Alma assures him that together they can take Aki down. He just needs to step forward and let him handle the rest. Hikaru doesn't know how this is going to end, but he decides to trust Alma and charges straight towards Aki. Aki was prepared to defend herself at first, but when Alma kept into the air and transformed, it knocked the wind straight out of her lungs, leaving her gasping for air on the ground. Hikaru and Alma take the opportunity to flee, and a few hours later, when the coast is clear, they come out of hiding and run away. Meanwhile, Aki returns to base and reports her failure to capture Alma. She couldn't have predicted that the kid would be capable of utilizing Alma's power, but even if he got away for now, there's no doubt that Kagami's group will track him down soon enough, so they have to act quickly and find him first. The next day, Hikaru ends up taking Alma to school with him since he has nowhere to keep him, but he's trying to keep a low profile so those people who are after him won't be able to find him. However, as he gets to his class, he is horrified to discover that Aki is transferring into his class and she doesn't look happy. While Hikaru tries to ignore Aki's death glare, there's someone else with their eyes set on him as two agents are watching him from a nearby building. Tus and Wanner work for the Kagami group and were assigned to recover the trigger arm by any means necessary, and that includes murder, although Tus doesn't like the idea of killing a kid. After class, Hikaru sneaks into the bathroom to get away from Aki, and he never could have imagined she would come after him in school, although it didn't seem like she wanted to fight this time. Hikaru figures she just doesn't want to cause a scene within the school, but be that as it may, if she isn't going to fight them in school, Alma thinks they should try talking to her. Yesterday, things were so hectic that they had no choice but to fight Aki, but now that he thinks about it, she was trying to be somewhat friendly at first, although Hikaru doesn't remember it that way. Still, it's not like there are many people he can talk to about Alma, so it's either he goes with Aki or he goes to the police. He asks Alma what he thinks they should do, but Alma wasn't really paying attention because he was having too much fun messing with the toilet paper. However, Aki was listening in from the other stall, and she tells him that going to the police is a bad idea because they'll immediately hand him over to Kagami. She climbs into Hikaru's stall and tells him she is here to be his bodyguard, but Hikaru is too flustered by the fact that she's so close to him in the boys' restroom, so he runs out and Aki chases after him. A little while later, Hikaru has lost Aki and is having lunch with his friends, but with how Aki has been chasing after him lately, they are starting to think he might be in a relationship with her or something. Hikaru denies it, but it's hard for him to sound convincing, especially since Aki arrives on the roof looking for him a second later. Hikaru's friends call Aki over to tell her Hikaru is here, but all of a sudden, Hikaru actually isn't there anymore. He somehow managed to climb up and out of sight in that split second, but Alma doesn't understand why he is being so evasive when they already decided to try and talk to her. Just then, one of Hikaru's other classmates arrives on the roof as well, and she has been looking for Aki all over. She introduces herself as Meru and tells Aki it's nice to finally meet her, but Aki doesn't look pleased to meet her. Meru chalks Aki's cold look to nervousness since she is a new student here, so she offers her a welcome gift in the form of a tray of cookies. Hikaru thinks Aki is going to flip out, but on the contrary, Aki seems entranced by all the cookies, so she grabs a fistful and shoves it in her mouth. Meru is a little surprised with how fast Aki ate the cookies, but she's glad her gift was well received, so she asks Aki if the two of them can be friends, and Aki says she doesn't mind. Aki seems a lot more normal than Hikaru first thought she would be, but that still doesn't mean he wants to talk to her, so he decides to put on some noise-canceling headphones and go to sleep so he doesn't have to deal with her till the end of the day. Meanwhile, as Aki is still eating the cookies, Meru asks about her relationship with Hikaru, but Aki had totally forgotten that she was supposed to be looking for him. Wanting to be helpful, Meru tells her she has an idea to get Aki alone with Hikaru, so later that day, while Hikaru is trying to get out of school without being noticed, Meru goes up to him and delivers a handwritten letter from Aki. Hikaru can already tell what this is going to be about, and just as he suspected, Aki is trying to get him to meet her. Meru ends up dragging Hikaru out to an abandoned section of the school, and she won't let him leave because she believes Aki wants to confess her love for him. Hikaru has no choice, so he walks into the class where Aki is waiting for him and yells at her for dragging Meru into this. Aki denies getting Meru involved because this whole operation was Meru's idea, but even if that's the case, Aki has still been following him around all day, so he wants to know what her business is with him. Aki explains that she is a member of an organization called ARMS, and she has been tasked with watching over Alma and being his bodyguard. Alma thinks this is good news since that means Aki is going to be protecting them, but Aki clarifies and says her only job is to protect Alma, so she isn't concerned with what happens to Hikaru. Although since Alma is linked to him, there's not much she can do to separate them. As part of her mission, she needs to bring both of them back to HQ. Of course, they won't harm Hikaru if he cooperates with them, and Alma thinks this is terrific news, but Hikaru still doesn't feel so confident about going with Aki, since he still isn't sure she can be trusted. Alma understands Hikaru's concerns, but Aki seems to know something about him, and Alma still wants to know what and who he is. Hikaru feels bad for Alma, so he decides to agree to go with Aki, even if he doesn't trust her. But before he does, he wants to know why Alma loses power whenever he leaves his side. After what she just witnessed, Aki's brain stops braining because it shouldn't be possible for a Mecha U to fuse to a jacket, and there's no information about something like this. She eventually gets up close and tells Hikaru that she needs to take him in for some tests, but he's freaked out by how aggressive she's being and asks Alma if there's anything he can do to get them out of this. So Alma attempts to use the power they used against her yesterday, but while there's a huge flash of light, it doesn't actually do anything because Alma doesn't have the strength for it. That leaves only one other option, so Hikaru grabs Alma and starts running away. But when he tries to leave through the front door, Miru stops him from getting out and says he should finish talking to Aki before she lets him out. Meanwhile, outside, Toos and Wanner are watching the entrance to the building, but because there's a schoolgirl standing outside, they can't do anything without revealing themselves to her. Back inside, Hikaru has been trying to find a way out of the building, but all the other exits have been boarded shut, so it looks like his only choice is to go up. Meanwhile, Aki is still trying to locate him, so Dex says he thinks she should head down the right hall, and Sinis says he thinks she should follow the left hallway, but Aki doesn't listen to either of them and decides to go down, breaking through the floor and landing directly on top of Hikaru. Now there's nowhere for Hikaru to run. Aki can't understand why he is running away when he chose to spare her life yesterday. Hikaru says there's no way he would ever kill a person, but Aki isn't listening anymore and assumes Hikaru must be plotting something and is using Alma. Alma tries to defend him and says Hikaru isn't a bad person, but Aki still doesn't believe him, so Alma tries to use his power to protect him, but once again, nothing happens. Aki takes this as proof that Hikaru isn't bonded with Alma, so she intends to eliminate him right now for the sake of Alma's safety. However, just then Miru walks in because she heard a loud sound, and let's just say the position they're in gives her the wrong idea, so she turns around and leaves to give them some privacy. As she leaves, Aki prepares to resume her elimination of Hikaru, but he's already gone and hidden, so she has to start searching all over the place for him. Once she's gone, Hikaru gets up and tries to walk out the front door, but this time, Wanner stops him and he is wearing one of the Kagami group uniforms, so Hikaru is immediately put on edge. Wanner says he needs some help from Hikaru, but Hikaru doesn't feel like offering any help after the Kagami group nearly kill him with a bunch of drones. Wanner apologizes for that and says they made a mistake with the drones, but he's only sorry that they couldn't finish him off sooner. He blasts Hikaru with a sonic cannon, and although it doesn't do any physical damage, Hikaru falls to his feet because he suddenly feels really dizzy. With Hikaru incapacitated, Wanner kicks the door open to give Toos a clear shot, but he's actually standing in her way, so she can't take the shot. By the time Wanner moves out of the way, Alma is able to drag Hikaru's body to prevent him from getting shot, but they are still in imminent danger, so Hikaru gets up and runs back into the building. Toos yells at Wanner for messing up her shot, but she needs to get this over with, so she begins firing through the walls in hopes of hitting Hikaru, and he is seriously worried she might kill him, but Alma has something else he is concerned about. Even though Wanner is using a Mecha Yud, Alma doesn't sense any consciousness from it, and just then, Wanner hits Hikaru with another sonic wave. Hikaru collapses at the end of the hallway, and Toos takes the shot at the last second. Hikaru is saved by Aki. Wanner fires another sonic wave, and Aki tries to block it, but just like it did with Hikaru, she suddenly gets dizzy and falls to the ground. Wanner is having the time of his life right now because he enjoys making people suffer, but Aki refuses to be taken down because she still needs to protect Alma. So she gets back up and asks Hikaru to run away while he has the chance. Hikaru doesn't feel right leaving Aki behind to fight by herself, but she pleads with him to just run because they can't let the Kagami group get their hands on Alma. Hikaru listens to her and runs away while she keeps Wanner busy, but then Wanner pulls out a weapon that she isn't prepared to deal with. Hikaru starts climbing up the stairs and he is getting really frustrated with the way people keep coming after him, but Alma stops him and says he doesn't think they should be leaving Aki by herself after all. Hikaru reminds him that Aki said they should run to ensure Alma's safety, but while that may be true, Alma doesn't like the idea of leaving her behind, so he jumps off Hikaru's back and punches a hole through the wall so Hikaru can escape. But as for him, he's going to go help Aki. At least that's what he wants to do, but he loses power as soon as he gets too far from Hikaru. Hikaru ends up agreeing to go with him since Alma can't move otherwise, but they still need a plan of action before they face Wanner and his sonic cannon. It turns out that Wanner managed to defeat Aki by using the shackles that remove the consciousness of Mecha Yud, and he is currently driving her up to the roof for Toos to snipe her. But to his surprise, Toos actually came down in person because he was taking too long to get the job done. She takes one look at Aki and mocks her for being so pathetic, but even though she really wants to kill her, she has orders to bring Aki back alive. She tells Wanner to go back into the building and look for Hikaru, but he doesn't have to spend much time looking for him because Hikaru was already coming up the staircase. As soon as Hikaru spots Wanner, he tries to punch him, but he's no boxer, so he gets dodged. He may not be the best fighter, but he can at least guarantee that Wanner's attacks won't be effective against him. Wanner decides to blast him anyway, but Hikaru wasn't bluffing when he said he was immune to the sonic wave because he has his noise-canceling earpieces in. He just intended to buy enough time for Aki to make a comeback, but when he looks over at her, he realizes that she has been captured. That kind of messes up his plan, but he comes up with an even better plan and chucks Alma over at Aki to get the shackles off her Mecha Yud. Unfortunately, Alma starts losing power once he gets far away from Hikaru, so Hikaru has to run to get closer, and somehow, Toos, who is meant to be a sniper, misses this easy shot. Alma and Hikaru manage to get Aki free, and the second she can move again, she grabs Toos and uses her as a human shield to charge at Wanner. Wanner doesn't want to use his blast on Toos, but she orders him to shoot for the sake of the mission, and he does as she instructed, but all it managed to do is knock Toos out, and immediately after, Aki proceeds to knock the daylights out of Wanner. Due to all the damage that was done to the building during their fight, it's about to collapse, and just before it does, Toos regains consciousness and flies away, leaving Wanner to get buried along with the others. Aki and Hikaru turn out alright, but her boss from ARMS soon shows up, and he's not pleased with the amount of destruction she caused to accomplish her mission. They take him back to their headquarters, and once Hikaru finally wakes up, he is introduced to the leader of the ARMS group, Algis, and his Mecha Yud, Fist. He explains that they fight against the Kagami group, whose goal is to claim all the Mecha Yud as theirs and control them like slaves. Alma doesn't recall anything about them, but apparently Fist is his brother, and they need his help to win this war. Alma doesn't think twice about offering his help, and he convinces Hikaru to do the same, but Aki and Algis tell him that they only actually need Alma for this, so he doesn't really have to be here. While he was asleep, they ran some tests on him to measure the levels of Arbitrium in his body. Arbitrium is an energy that is produced by the human mind, and it is needed as fuel by all Mecha Yud, but when Hikaru's Arbitrium levels are put on a graph, this is what his levels look like, and this is what the average Mecha Yud user has. If it wasn't already clear, Hikaru is pretty much a failure when it comes to wielding Mecha Yud, and there's no sugarcoating it. Algis agrees that Hikaru may have been the one to awaken Alma, but he is also the reason Alma is fused to a jacket, and he can't even use Alma's power on top of that. They have no choice but to leave Alma in his care for now, but Algis wants to make it clear that he is not allowed to act on his own under any circumstances because he is not capable of handling himself. Alma tries to stick up for Hikaru, and points out that Hikaru is the only reason he wasn't captured by Kagami, but be that as it may, Quinn says it is still a fact that Hikaru doesn't have the power to use Alma, so he's a liability. Just then, Aki interrupts him and says she believes Hikaru may be capable of drawing out Alma's potential. After all, he was able to harness Alma's power the first time they met, so she is sure he can grow stronger with a little training. So far, this training has involved Alma doing push-ups on the school roof, and while Hikaru is glad Aki offered to train him, he isn't sure how effective this really is because Alma is the only one moving while Hikaru is just sitting here. Aki tells him that training Arbitrium is about spirit, so he just needs to psych himself up as much as he can to make himself stronger, and that's fine. However, that still doesn't explain how exercise is meant to increase his Arbitrium, but he decides to just go with it for now. A few moments later, Aki receives a phone call from ARMS that they tell her that she needs to return to HQ, so she cuts Hikaru and Alma's training short and takes them back with her. There have been a lot of recent incidents where Mecha Yud were being ripped away from their wielders, and this guy is the third victim this week. Algis believes this might be the work of a new Kagami agent, so his top priority is to retrieve the stolen Mecha Yud as quickly as possible before it's too late. Alma doesn't understand what he means by too late, so Dex explains that if a person's Mecha Yud is forcibly ripped from his body, then he will die within a few days. The reason isn't entirely known, but they believe it might be because Arbitrium starts leaking out of the fusion point, causing the person to grow weaker and weaker until they eventually pass away. There's still a lot about Arbitrium that remains unknown, but what they do know is that it has drastic effects on the human biological system. For instance, anyone who fuses with a Mecha Yud gains incredible physical ability, although in Hikaru's case, since Alma didn't fuse with his body, he is still just a regular human. Aki notices some marks on the victim's arms, and she can immediately tell that whoever did this must have been using a worm-type mecha, and Algis already knows where she's going with this, so he reminds her that her job right now is to protect Alma at all costs, so he doesn't want her getting involved in this case even if she has personal reasons. After Algis leaves, Aki ignores everything he just said and says there's something she wants to investigate for personal reasons, but since she has to guard Hikaru, he's coming with her. Meanwhile, over at the Kagami group, they are scrambling to find the whereabouts of Jun, the younger brother of Kagami. He apparently stole an experimental artificial mecha Yude and has disappeared, but no one knows what he intends to do with it. The leader of the 3rd Division offers to get the job done, but the 3rd Division are the same ones who let Alma escape last time, so this time the White Ravens are put on the job. Elsewhere, Hikaru is out with Aki late into the night, and by now he has figured out that she's investigating that case even though Al just told her not to, but he wonders if it's really alright for them to be out here by themselves. Aki refuses to answer him, but a moment later they hear the sound of horns nearby, and on the other side of the containers, we see the White Ravens busy looking for Kagami's younger brother. The group's leader, Amada, tells all his men to continue searching the area, but just then, Aki and Hikaru approach them. Hikaru really doesn't think it's a good idea to interact with people from the Kagami group, but Aki tells him everything will be fine as long as he stays by her side and keeps Alma hidden. She asks Amada if he knows anything about a worm-type Mecha Yude wielder, and at first they think she's just a regular girl, but the second she mentions Mecha Yude, Amada and his group turn hostile because they can't let the general public find out about the mechas. They rush in to capture her and Aki is left with no choice but to fight them, so she calls Sinus and Dex out to help. Amada is shocked once he realizes that she is a mecha wielder, but they still have to take her down, so he orders the White Ravens to regroup and attack again. Meanwhile, Hikaru gets blown away in the scuffle, and while he's trying to get back on his feet, he notices a young boy with an inhaler hiding in a corner. He tells the boy that it's dangerous to be here and asks if he is alright, but the boy doesn't answer and starts running away. Hikaru doesn't know much about the kid, but he's worried about him, so he decides to follow him, leaving Aki to deal with the White Ravens. Amada sees this happen, so his mecha Joe transforms into a bike and he rides off to chase after the kid. At the same time, a few White Raven members have caught up to the kid and Hikaru, so Hikaru gets in front of the kid to protect him. The White Raven guys are totally ready to beat Hikaru up if it means getting to the kid, but before Hikaru actually gets hit, Alma comes out and blocks the strike. Just then, they notice Amada and his Mecha Yude bike heading straight for them, but when Hikaru turns around to tell the kid to run, he realizes the kid is already gone. Amada's original target may have escaped, but now that he has spotted Alma, he changes plans and targets him instead. Alma realizes he and Hikaru are being targeted, so he turns around and tries to drag Hikaru to safety. However, in terms of speed, there's no way Alma could ever beat a motorcycle, so Amada catches up to him and grabs Alma. He's really proud of himself for being able to capture the trigger arm, but all of a sudden, Aki appears out of nowhere and knocks Amada off his bike. She then begins questioning Amada and Joe about a worm-type Mecha Yude wielder, and they don't want to be crushed by a container, so they are willing to comply, but they really don't know anything about a worm-type wielder, so Aki drops the container and lets them go. She's disappointed that she couldn't find any leads, but that aside, she's also pissed at Hikaru for running off on his own. He tries to explain that he saw a kid being chased, so he wanted to help, but Aki refuses to listen to his excuses. He nearly got Alma captured with his careless behavior, and as much as she wants to believe in him right now, he is still utterly powerless, so she tells him he can't do anything on his own. While this is going on, the kid from before is watching from the rooftops, and it seems like he has an interest in Alma as well, so he's going to wait for the perfect time to strike. Back on the ground, Hikaru is equally pissed at Aki, because she is the one who brought him here against his wishes in the first place, so if anyone's to blame for this, it's her. She couldn't even be bothered to tell him what she's doing here, so why would he trust her enough to blindly follow her orders? In fact, he has no reason to listen to her anymore, so he says he's just going to go home. Sinus and Dex ask Aki if it's really alright for them to let Hikaru go on his own, but she's mad at him right now, so she says she doesn't care what happens to him. As Hikaru is walking away, Alma tries to convince him to go apologize to Aki for what he said because she's the one protecting them, but he refuses to do so. Jun thinks this is great since if Hikaru is arguing with his bodyguard, it makes it a whole lot easier to steal Alma from him. However, before he could go after Alma, he gets cut off by Aki, who still feels obligated to keep them safe no matter what. Jun had hoped he wouldn't have to deal with her, but since he has no choice now, he brings out his mecha and Aki is enraged because it's a worm type. She thinks Jun is the guy she has been looking for. However, after they clash for the first time, Dex can tell that he's not the one Aki is after, but that brief moment of distraction buys June enough time to surround her, and this is probably bad news for her. Meanwhile, Hikaru is out thinking about his argument with Aki when he suddenly gets a call from her. Alma tells him to apologize for yelling now that he's got the chance, but when he checks his phone, he sees a picture of Aki knocked out cold on the ground. June then calls using her phone and tells Hikaru that he has stripped Aki of her mecha Yude, and without them, she'll be dead in a matter of hours. So if Hikaru wants to save her, he's going to have to meet him at this location. The first thing Hikaru does is call Aljaz to inform him of what happened to Aki, but while Aljaz is worried about her, he can't have Hikaru go to face June because that's exactly what he wants. For now, he says he will assign some agents to track him down, but for now, he tells Hikaru and Alma not to try anything funny and to stay where they are. Hikaru is getting sick of people telling him that he is too weak to do anything, and he's starting to believe they may be right, but Alma assures him that he is capable of doing great things when he puts his mind to it. Hikaru denies it since every heroic act he has performed so far has been because of Alma's influence, so if he were still on his own, he would have remained a coward. He acknowledges that he is truly powerless on his own. Right now, he's not on his own, so he asks Alma to lend him some strength for what he's about to do. Hikaru and Alma head over to the abandoned warehouse June marked on the map, and as they enter, June greets them with a smile. Alma asks why he is doing this, so June explains that he wants the strongest mecha Yude. Sinus and Dex are nice and all, but compared to what he's after, they are worthless pieces of junk. What he wants is the trigger arm because it is said that whoever fuses with the trigger arm will gain the strongest body, and he wants that for himself. June begins attacking with his mecha, and Hikaru is forced to start running around the room to avoid getting hit, but once the opportunity presents itself, he closes the distance and tries to grab Sinus and Dex, but June is one step ahead and blocks all his attempts. He mocks Hikaru and tells him he is nothing more than a weakling. And while Hikaru doesn't deny the fact that he is weak, he refuses to let that stop him from doing the right thing, so he charges back in. He's able to outpace June enough to break through his defenses. June is pissed that Hikaru is making him work so hard, and his asthma is starting to act up, so he decides to end things once and for all. He forms a giant cage around Hikaru, and once there's nowhere left for him to run, June electrocutes him until he collapses to the ground. He then captures Hikaru and begins pulling Alma away from him until they are ripped apart. June is relieved that he finally has Alma so he can fix his body, but to his surprise, Alma is still able to move and knocks him over. He doesn't understand what's going on since a mecha Yude shouldn't be capable of moving on their own, but he gets even more confused when Hikaru starts moving as well because he should be on the verge of death after having his mecha ripped out. Hikaru reaches out for Alma, and as the two touch, Alma's true power is unleashed, so June is starting to get worried. He tries forming a fist to knock them out, but he is sorely outmatched by Hikaru and Alma, so they easily crush it. The two of them launch a fist at June, and just when he thinks he has blocked it, Hikaru runs up and finishes the job with one final punch. June is down for the count at this point, so Hikaru and Alma think they can finally relax, but unfortunately they were wrong. The head of the White Ravens has shown up, and both Hikaru and Alma think they are going to have to fight again, but the man assures them that he isn't getting paid to fight them right now, so he just wants to take June and go. He also picks up Sinus and Dex, which he intends to take as well, but Hikaru says he isn't going to let him get away with them. The man is totally ready to get forceful, but June stops him and says he wants to be the one to defeat Hikaru, so he forbids the man from harming him for now. The man concedes and gives the mecha Yude back to Hikaru, but he assures Hikaru that they will meet again someday, and when that day comes, he won't be able to escape so easily. A little while later, Aki wakes up in a hospital with Sinus and Dex reattached to her, and once she learns that Hikaru is the one who saved her, she goes to meet him up on the roof while he's trying to sew Alma back to his jacket. She sits down next to him and things are a little awkward, so Hikaru asks what it was she was looking for last night. Aki tells him she was searching for the person who killed her family, but the only clue she has is that the person is a worm-type mecha Yude wielder, and it turns out that June wasn't the guy who did it. She acted rashly because of her quest for revenge, so she is thankful that Hikaru saved her. She wants to do something to pay him back, so she offers to sew Alma back together for him. But she's really bad at sewing, so Hikaru tries to stop her, but in the process, Miru walks in with some sweets and misunderstands the situation. Hikaru is now officially a part of ARMS, so a few days later, he is sent out on his first mission for the team. A couple other ARMS members are on standby, while Hikaru is clinging to the top of a transport truck that is holding captured mecha Yude, and when Ed looks inside, there's a really dangerous-looking fat guy in there beating up a scientist. The others were already expecting this, so they remind Hikaru that he should just stick to the plan and set off the EMP they gave him once the truck passes the interchange up ahead. Hikaru intends to do as he is told, but when Alma sees the fat man abuse his shackled mecha Yude, he refuses to stand by any longer and does something that causes the truck to flip over and cause a major accident on the road. Hikaru managed to make it out alright, but now he has to run as fast as he can because Alma gave away their position, and now he's a target. Unfortunately, the fat man throws the truck in front of him to cut off his escape route, and things are looking pretty bad for him. So ARMS member Tani and his mecha Carex decide to go help him a little. The man launches several missiles at Hikaru, and he's just barely able to dodge them, but the guy has 3 mechas on him, so he pulls out an arm cannon next and aims to turn Hikaru to ash. However, just before he could get hit, Tani zooms in and pulls him to safety. Hikaru is thankful for the help, and Alma apologizes for causing such a mess with his actions, but they don't have much time to talk because the man soon locates them, and he goes in to attack once more. However, this time he gets intercepted by Aki and is knocked to the ground. She is disappointed that Hikaru and Alma managed to mess up such a simple task, so she tells Tani to get them out of here before they cause more problems for the mission. Once the man gets back up, he notices that Aki has 2 mechas, but he still believes he is superior because he has 3. However, as he tries to kick her, she easily catches him, and when he tries to blast her, he runs out of energy and passes out. Evidently, using a mecha Yude takes a lot of stamina, so it takes a lot of training to be able to wield more than one effectively. Training that this guy did not have, especially considering he has never seen the inside of a gym. Aki doesn't think the guy will be getting back up anytime soon, so she decides to contact the recovery team to come get this guy. But while her back is turned, someone else shows up and uses a worm-type mecha to do something to the guy. So by the time she realizes something is wrong, the guy is already back on his feet, and he is even stronger than he was before. Aki is having a lot of trouble dealing with the guy's strength now, and her chances of victory aren't looking great, but thankfully, Hikaru comes running in and knocks the man away. Aki yells that she told him to run away, but he couldn't just sit and watch while she was in trouble, so he made the decision to help her anyway. The man gets back up and fires his laser cannon, but Hikaru and Alma see it coming, and together they are easily able to deflect the blast. The man then tries to crush them with the truck, but Hikaru is completely unharmed and dashes forward once last time before knocking the guy out with a single punch. Once the battle is over, Tani comes up and congratulates Hikaru on doing such a good job because his efforts allowed them to rescue so many mecha Yude, and he is grateful for all praise, but Aki seems a lot more interested in the man. Back at HQ, while Aki is taking a shower, she has flashbacks to the time she spent with her sister and how she made a promise to protect her, but she ultimately failed to keep that promise, so now the only thing she can do is avenge her family. Outside the shower area, a scientist Aki had asked for help is waiting for her, but once she finally comes out, he starts freaking out because this is the first time he has seen her fresh out of the shower. He explains that he's just here to give a report on the matter Aki asked him to look into, and unfortunately, he wasn't able to get any useful information from the man they captured. They inspected the mecha Yude he was using, and none of them were worm types, but Aki clearly remembers seeing a worm type, so something strange is going on. The guy tells Aki that he knows she's trying to avenge her family, and he vows to help her investigate it with everything he has, so he wants her to rely on him instead of Hikaru, but by the time he is done speaking, Aki has already left to go get Hikaru. Over at Hikaru's house, Alma wakes up and realizes that he and Hikaru overslept, and if Hikaru doesn't wake up soon, they are going to be late for school, so he starts trying to drag him out of bed by the pants and even offers to help him change his clothes. Just then, Aki busts into Hikaru's room through his window, and since he's not ready for school yet, she says she will help him get dressed and her offer is non-negotiable. Meanwhile, at school, all the students are excited because they heard that there will be a new transfer student joining their class today, and the dude is apparently mega rich, so everyone wants to get to know him. Just then, the door opens and everyone turns to see Aki holding Hikaru, who's only half-dressed. They all immediately think there's something going on between them, and Meru is already imagining things, but once Aki sets Hikaru down in his, she informs them that a new transfer student is joining their class. This is the first time Aki has heard of this, and just then, a call comes in over the PA system, and the guy's yelling for Hikaru to go up to the roof. So Hikaru and Aki head up there, and they find June waiting for them. The second Sinus and Dex see him, they immediately attack because of what June did to Aki the last time they met, but he is able to block her attack with his mecha. He is getting annoyed because she's interrupting him, so he prepares to take her down, but before he actually does anything, he gets a message from Todo, the head of the White Ravens, and he was very clear when he told June that the only reason he was allowed to attend school was because he promised not to use his mecha in school, yet he's already breaking that promise. June tries to argue that Aki is the one who attacked him first, but Todo refuses to make an exception, so June is forced to withdraw his mecha and surrender. Aki is totally ready to knock him out, but Hikaru tells her to stop since it's clear that Jun doesn't want to fight anymore, so she decides to let him go for now. Jun still swears that he will claim the trigger arm for himself eventually, but that's a job for another day because the reason he came to this school is actually Hikaru. The scientist that made his mecha told him that it will take time for it to adapt to his body, so until he's able to fully control it, he decided to spend his time watching Hikaru so he can figure out what secret makes him capable of using Alma like he does. And once he has learned Hikaru's secret, he will crush him and steal the trigger arm. Hikaru notices that Jun keeps referring to Alma as the trigger arm, so he asks if Jun knows any other useful information about him since Alma lost his memories. But before Jun can answer, Aki attacks him one more time because she thinks he is too dangerous to be left alive. She was completely ready to go through with it too. But Alma and Alma grab her because they need to get some information about Alma's past from Jun. While they fight, Jun starts walking away, but before he leaves, Jun reminds Hikaru that his mecha restrictions only apply to school, so if he ever catches Hikaru lacking on the streets, he's not going to let him get away. Later that day, Aki and Hikaru are walking through the halls together and Aki is sticking really close to him, which is starting to get annoying for Hikaru. He is forced to distract her with an imaginary rice ball in order to create some separation, but that doesn't last very long because no matter where he goes, Aki is always right there next to him. He eventually manages to lose her, but he had to use his lunch as another distraction, so he hasn't eaten anything yet, and just as he was contemplating what to do, he hears Jun's voice coming from above him. Jun remembers asking Todo if he knows what makes Hikaru capable of using the trigger arm without any training, and Todo had no idea, so he suggested that it might be the food Hikaru eats or something. So he waves his black card and says he's going to treat Hikaru to lunch today so he can see what he eats. Hikaru thinks the offer is strange, but he did have something he wanted to talk to Jun about, so he starts asking him if he knows anything about Alma's past. But before Jun can answer, Hikaru gets his legs swept out by Aki, who refuses to let Jun get close to Hikaru, but she would happily accept Jun's offer of a free lunch though, and she already has a meal in mind. A little bit later, while Hikaru is sitting in the bathroom to get some alone time, he tells Alma that he doesn't know what to do about Aki because she won't let him get close to Jun at all. Jun definitely knows something about Alma's past too, but Aki doesn't seem to care, and at this rate, Hikaru may never get the chance to ask Jun about Alma, but just then, he comes up with an idea that might get him close to Jun. Today is the sports tournament, so while they are out on the field, Hikaru thinks he might be able to talk to him, but when the time finally comes, Jun is nowhere to be found. Just then, Hikaru gets hit in the face with a ball, and Jun, who has been watching him from a tree this entire time, can't believe Hikaru's reaction time is so slow even though he has the strongest mecha. Jun then senses something coming his way, so he dodges and another ball bounces off the tree, somehow ricocheting onto Hikaru's head and knocking him out cold this time. The ball was thrown by Aki, but she had meant to hit Jun, so she apologizes to Hikaru for knocking him out. Since Hikaru is unconscious, Miru takes the opportunity to play out one of her fantasies, so she ties him up in a ribbon and sets up a fight between Aki and Jun to see who gets to have Hikaru. Aki is down for a fight since she is still holding a grudge against Jun for what he did to her, and Jun is always ready for violence. But since Meru is here, he and Aki agree to a plain fistfight. Meru is loving all the drama, but Alma pleads with Hikaru to find a way to talk Aki out of it since he still needs to talk to Jun. Hikaru thinks for a second, and the only thing that might be able to convince Aki is food, so he stands up and yells that if Aki agrees to give him a few minutes alone with Jun, that he will pay for her to go to a buffet. That sounds really tempting to her, so she ultimately agrees and drags Meru off to give Jun and Hikaru some privacy. Once the two of them are alone, Jun asks what Hikaru wanted to talk about, so Hikaru and Alma begin asking him if he knows anything about Alma's past since the Kagami group seems really invested in capturing him. Alma explains that he lost all his memories, so anything Jun can enlighten him on would be much appreciated. Jun can't believe the trigger arm actually got amnesia, but he tells Alma that there are a bunch of records about him in the Kagami group archives. After all, Alma used to belong to the Kagami group in the first place, and Jun shows them a photo as proof. The photo is one of Alma and Yakumo Kagami, the founder of the Kagami group and the one who made this city what it is today. This is a total shock to Hikaru and Alma, but Jun can't offer much of an explanation since this photo was taken decades ago. As Jun leaves, Aki watches from the bridge while Meru is tied up next to her, but then she receives a call from the scientist from earlier because he found the lead on the worm-type Mecha Yude users she's been looking for. A little while later, Hikaru and Alma head to the city library to do some research on Yakumo Kagami, but Alma can't understand why the people here all seem to love the Kagami group so much when they have been doing terrible things to Mecha Yude. Hikaru agrees that their recent actions have been heinous, but from the perspective of the people, the Kagami group has done a lot to improve the city, so of course they would be loved. Hikaru and Alma soon come across a portrait of Yakumo Kagami, and Alma breaks down in robo-tears, because he can tell that this person is meant to be important to him, but he doesn't remember a thing about them. Elsewhere in the city, Tammy has just been captured by the worm-type mecha user, and Aki is the first to arrive on the scene, but before she could do anything to help him, the mecha had already ripped Carex out of Tanny's body. It then tosses Tanny to Aki, but as for Carex, it squeezes him until he shatters into pieces. Aki, Sinus, and Dex are all enraged and attack the worm user, but it gets out of the way before they could strike it, and once it's a good distance away, it launches something into the Darai's hole in Tanny's body and turns him into some sort of puppet to fight Aki. The worm user then tries to escape, and while Aki wants to make sure Tanny is alright, she also desperately wants to capture the worm user, so she knocks Tanny out and rips off the worm control device. Hikaru receives a call about Tanny's current condition, so he rushes over to check on him and finds him unconscious in the alleyway. Tanny gets brought back to HQ, and thanks to Hikaru's quick action, Tanny should be able to survive, but as for Carex, there's no saving him. Mecha Yude are mechanical life forms, but they still die the same way humans do, and nothing can change that. They originally came from a different dimension in search of Ordella, the father of all Mecha Yude, and thanks to some helpful humans they were able to find it, but during an experiment to awaken it, an accident occurred, and as a result, Alma was forced to use up all this power to seal it away, which is likely the cause of his memory loss. The key to Ordella lies within Alma's forgotten memories, and depending on who gets their hands on it, the fate of the world may hang in the balance. When Aki met up with Quen, he informed her that the worm-type user she's looking for is still on the loose. He first realized this when the incident reports showed that there was someone stripping people of their mechas aside from June. This has been going on for months, so Aki angrily grabs him by the collar and asks why he didn't tell her about this sooner. But in his defense, he didn't know about this either until now. The only reason he found out about it is because he hacked into the ARMS database to help Aki, so Aki lets him go. But if this information has been in the ARMS database for months, that means Algis knew about it all along and decided not to tell her. Quen tells her that Algis was probably investigating the incidents personally because he has been keeping track of it for 8 years now. Just then, an alarm goes off, which means the worm-type user is active again, so Aki wastes no time and rushes out to confront her sworn enemy. Eventually, she finds the worm user in an empty parking garage, and she is ready to get revenge for her dead parents and sister. But as she gets close to the worm-type user so she can attack, she gets a good look at her face, and it turns out to be her little sister, Fubuki. Back when Aki and Fubuki were still little, they would play games together with Sinus and Dex, but Aki never really understood the point of the game. A few moments later, their mother entered the room and called for Fubuki to come out since it was her turn to do the experiments. Normally, Aki would have to do this, but her leg was injured at the time, so Fubuki was filling in for her. Fubuki left the room with a smile, but that was the last time Aki saw her, because the next thing she knew, the facility burst into flames and neither Fubuki nor her parents were ever seen again. That is until now. Aki, Sinus, and Dex are all in disbelief that Fubuki is still alive, and Fubuki is just as happy to see Aki, but from the way she's coughing, it's obvious that she isn't in great condition right now. Her worm mecha comes out, and the second it does, Sinus and Dex grab and slam it into the wall. There are a lot of questions left unanswered, but for now, they have to get out of here since ARMS is about to arrive on the scene. By the time the ARMS agents arrive in the garage, there's nothing there aside from the crack in the wall and one of Aki's broken hair clips, so Al just knows she must have been there. Outside the garage, Aki is still holding the worm mecha hostage, and she intends to get the answers, so she asks the mecha if it was the one who killed her parents. The mecha tries to explain and tells them it was all an accident, but Sinus and Dex refuse to let her finish because they think she's lying. Sinus was there with Fubuki on the day of the incident, and he clearly remembers the worm mecha attacking everyone. The only thing he doesn't know is why it did it. Fubuki pleads with Aki to stop and tells her that it's not Amaryllis' fault that their parents died. Fubuki blames herself for the incident and apologizes over and over to Aki, so Amaryllis tries to comfort her. There's definitely a lot more to the story than they had initially thought, so Sinus and Dex tell Amaryllis to tell them exactly what happened that day. On the day of the incident, everything was going as planned, and Fubuki was having fun telling her mom about the game she played with Aki. The experiment was meant to shed light on the possibility of arbitrium amplification, so Amaryllis and the woman she had derised with at the time walked in to assist. However, the second Amaryllis locked eyes with Fubuki. An unknown phenomenon occurred, causing both Amaryllis and Fubuki's arbitrium to resonate. Amaryllis tried to stop it by derising with Fubuki, but in the end it only made the situation worse. Fubuki has wanted to talk to Aki about this for so long, but she could never find the courage to face Aki since it's her fault that their parents died. Amaryllis assures Fubuki that it wasn't her fault, but even if Amaryllis claims it was all an accident, Aki still blames her for everything, so despite Fubuki's plea, she intends to destroy Amaryllis here and now. However, due to all the stress, Fubuki ends up fainting, and this is something Amaryllis had been worried about. Aki thinks they should get Fubuki to a hospital, but Amaryllis tells her there's no point in doing that because after the incident, Fubuki was left with a condition that prevents her from producing her own arbitrium, and apparently, no doctor or arms scientist will be able to help her. So far, they've been managing her symptoms, but at this rate, Fubuki won't last much longer. According to Amaryllis, there's only one way to make sure Fubuki survives, and it's going to be difficult to do. The next morning, when Hikaru's alarm goes off, Alma wakes him up because this is the time Aki usually comes flying through his window. However, today the window is still in one piece, and instead of her usual entrance, Aki rings the bell at the front door. Hikaru and Alma both think something's off since Aki never uses the front door, but it seems like she doesn't want to talk about it, so Hikaru isn't going to probe. Just then, Meru runs up to the two of them, and she's got something she wants to ask both of them. Since there's a big test coming up, she suggests that they should all have a group study session, including Jun, who has been spying on Hikaru from over there all morning. She goes up to him and asks if he would like to join the study group, but Jun says he's not going to be attending a silly study group because he didn't come to this school to learn. Meru completely ignores Jun's statement and yells over to ask Hikaru if they can have the study group at his house. Hikaru thinks about it for a second, and while he likes the idea of getting to spend time with Meru, he already knows Aki and Jun are going to get into a fight, and he would rather not have that happen in his house. He tries talking Meru out of the idea, but Meru insists and asks Aki to back her up on this. Aki politely declines, but Meru tries to convince her, saying this is a great chance to go to Hikaru's house. However, Aki goes to his house every morning, so there's nothing special about going for a study session. She then walks off, and Hikaru walks after her since he can tell that there's something wrong, but Aki refuses to tell him anything. Back at ARMS, one of the scientists there has gotten tired of not knowing what's going on, so she moves over to Quen's workstation and asks if he has any information about Aki since she hasn't come to HQ in a while. Quen initially denies knowing anything, but after a little violent persuasion, he admits that he may have had something to do with Aki's current situation. Meanwhile, Aki is sitting next to her sick sister while Amaryllis explains how they've been surviving so far. Since Fubuki can't generate her own arbitrium, Amaryllis has been sucking the arbitrium out of other mecha users and feeding it to her, but apparently, Fubuki's illness is progressing too fast for Amaryllis to keep up. There's very little time left before Fubuki's condition becomes critical, so Amaryllis urges Aki to do whatever it takes to ensure that her sister survives. And as it turns out, the only way for Aki to guarantee Fubuki's life is to take the life of Hikaru. At the same time, all across the city, all the mecha users who Amaryllis had infected, both ARMS and Kagami group members, begin to lash out in violent fits for no apparent reason, but Algis seems to have an idea as to what might be causing it. All available ARMS agents are ordered to go out into the field and restrain the mecha users that are out of control, and the Kagami group receives the same orders. Later that evening, Meru, Jun, and Hikaru are all heading to his house to study as planned. However, as they are walking, Hikaru receives a message from Algis, so he has to cancel on them and runs in the opposite direction. A little while later, he arrives at ARMS HQ, and Algis apologizes for calling him in on such short notice, but there's an issue he needs Hikaru's help with. There are dozens of mecha users who suddenly went out of control recently, and Algis believes the one behind it is the worm-type mecha users. He also has a video of Aki making friendly contact with this worm user, so he believes Aki may be involved in this somehow, and if he's right, then that means she has betrayed both humanity and the mecha dude. For now, he wants to capture and bring her in for questioning, but she's a powerful mecha user, so they might have to use force to stop her. Alma and Hikaru can't believe Algis suspects Aki when she's one of their comrades, but you can't run an organization based on feelings like that. The only reason Aki joined ARMS was because her goal aligned with their interests, but if her goal has changed, then there's nothing stopping her from betraying them. Hikaru refuses to accept that Aki would do something like that, so he rushes off to go find her before ARMS does so he can figure out what's going on. At least that's the plan. Queen points out that Hikaru has no idea where to find Aki in the first place. Quen has carefully weighed their options, and he has come up with the perfect solution to track Aki down. And it involves this guy. Hikaru recognizes Wanner as the guy who tried to kill him a couple of days ago, and it's clear that Wanner doesn't want to be here, but he doesn't have much of a choice in the matter. But before they discuss how they'll find Aki, Wanner's mecha comes out and begins profusely apologizing for Wanner's actions the other day. Hikaru is a bit confused by the situation since he thought Wanner's mecha was meant to be brainwashed, but after he was captured, Arms was able to remove the shackles and free Kagemaru. Quentin was reluctant to have Kagemaru rise with Wanner again, but there was no one else who could, and Kagemaru said he wanted to do it. Kagemaru intends to properly educate Wanner on what it means to fight for justice, and he will make sure Wanner learns even if he has to beat the concept into his skull. He forces Wanner to get down on his knees to apologize and swears to Hikaru and Alma that the two of them will be useful on their mission. Out in town, Kagemaru is busy scanning for Aki, but Wanner keeps complaining that he wants to go home, so Kagemaru gets annoyed and yells at him to work harder so he can atone for his wrongdoing. Hikaru and Alma are starting to wonder if this is really the best option for finding Aki, but Kagemaru assures them that it's only a matter of time before they find Aki, since he is using acoustic sonar to track her resonant arbitrium. Just then, Hikaru gets attacked from behind, so Kagemaru pulls him out of the way. The one who attacked him is Jun, and he is tired of Hikaru running away from him, so he declares that he won't leave Hikaru's side until he figures out the secret behind his power. If Jun is going to be hanging around them anyway, Alma asks if he is willing to help them look for Aki, but Jun never liked Aki to begin with, so why would he want to help look for her? To convince him, Alma says he will tell him a bunch of Hikaru's secrets at the study session if he helps them. Jun agrees and word reaches Todo of his decision, so he informs Jun's brother and asks if he should send someone out to keep an eye on him. But Jun's brother couldn't care less about his safety and says the company is more important, so he won't be diverting any personnel to watch over him. Meanwhile, Kagemaru has just tracked Aki's arbitrium to the parking garage and he's getting a strong signal, so he believes Aki must be nearby. However, when he reaches the source of the arbitrium's signature, they are confronted by Aki, and she looks like she is seriously going to follow through on Amaryllis' advice if it means saving her sister. Hikaru and Alma are worried about her, so they start asking if she got caught up in something involving the worm user like Al just said, but she cuts them off and says she needs Hikaru to come with her. Hikaru says he's fine with it since he trusts her, but he still wants an explanation as to what's going on. However, even though they already agreed to go with her, Aki still jumps into the air and attacks him anyway. Hikaru is completely caught off guard by this, but before Aki could knock him out, Jun steps in to defend him. He still doesn't like Hikaru as a person, but he has already sworn that he will be the one to defeat him, so he's not going to let Aki beat him to it. Aki tries to kick her way past Jun, but he still outclasses her in strength by a lot, so within a few moments he has Aki totally restrained. However, Hikaru comes up behind Jun and tells him to release Aki immediately. Sure, she may have attacked him first, but Hikaru is sure she has a good reason, so he asks her to calm down and listen to him. He doesn't know what she's going through, but he's willing to help her if she will just tell him what's going on. Aki seems hesitant to say anything, so Sinus and Dex tell Hikaru that Aki's sister is still alive, but she is sick from a lack of arbitrium, and she needs a huge amount of arbitrium to survive, so Aki has been trying to find a way to save her. According to Amaryllis, since Hikaru was capable of awakening Alma, that he might have enough arbitrium in his body to cure Fubuki. However, the second Amaryllis was mentioned, Jun starts laughing because he knows exactly what's going on here. The Kagami group has extensive files on Amaryllis, so we can say with confidence that Amaryllis has probably taken Fubuki hostage and is controlling her. Sinus and Dex don't believe Jun, so they start yelling at him, but Hikaru interrupts and says he is still willing to go with Aki since they are friends. Aki is a little surprised since this is the first time Hikaru has ever called her his friend, and speaking of which, Alma reminds them that they still have a buffet to go to after this, so they should hurry up and help Aki so they can take her as well. Jun becomes frustrated because it's like they didn't hear him when he specifically said that Amaryllis is trying to trick them. He refuses to let Hikaru go, but Hikaru shakes Jun off and tells him he has no right to stop him. He then turns to Aki and extends his hand to her so they can go help Fubuki, but after being reminded of how nice Hikaru always is to her, Aki can't bring herself to sacrifice him like she had planned, so instead, she tells him she doesn't need his help. There have to be other ways to save Fubuki, so she isn't going to involve an outsider like Hikaru in her family problems. And to top it off, she tells Hikaru that she's not his friend, so he shouldn't act so familiar with her. She then heads off to return to Fubuki, and Hikaru is confused, but Jun just thinks Aki is dumb for not realizing that Amaryllis is evil. Meanwhile, the two scientists are working hard to find any information related to Aki, and they soon come across some files on Amaryllis on a Kagami group database. The files say Amaryllis went out of control one day and caused the deaths of all people involved in the experiment, including Fubuki. They believe Amaryllis must be behind all of this, but they can't figure out why Amaryllis would become active now when so much time has passed. They don't have many clues, but they believe they can find something if they analyze the lip movement from the day Aki met the worm user. Meanwhile, Aki returns to Fubuki and Amaryllis, but since Hikaru isn't with her as planned, Amaryllis asks her what's going on. Aki tells her that Hikaru won't be coming, and Amaryllis is shocked because she can't believe Aki is backing out of the arrangement at a time like this. Aki tries to explain that she doesn't want to involve outsiders in their family matters, so she thinks they should find a solution by themselves. However, Fubuki begins accusing her of caring about Haruka more than she cares about her own sister. If Aki really loved her, then she should have no problem sacrificing Hikaru for her. But since she's not willing to do that, Fubuki asks her if she's going to abandon and let her die like last time. You might as well call the fire department with all this gaslighting, but Aki is still too blinded by sisterly love to realize that something is off about Fubuki's behavior, so she offers to take Hikaru's place and act as Fubuki's arbitrium battery. At the same time, Alma is trying to convince Hikaru that he should go after Aki, but he doesn't think he has the right to get involved in her affairs. She clearly said she didn't need his help, and her need for revenge is something he could never relate to, so he doesn't want to get in her way. All this while, Jun has been standing aside and minding his own business since he doesn't really care what happens to Aki. But when he hears Hikaru say he doesn't want to get in Aki's way, it reminds him of a time he felt the same way about his brother, and all of a sudden, he becomes really invested in making Hikaru go after Aki. He grabs him by the collar and tells him to quit feeling sorry for himself and make a decision already. Does he want to let Aki go, or does he want to stay by her side? And when given his ultimatum, Hikaru admits that he still wants to save Aki, so he's encouraged to do so. He may technically be an outsider in Aki's situation, but Alma tells him that what's important is the way he feels, and Hikaru is the kind of person who can't ignore others in trouble. Now that it has been decided that they are going to help Aki, Alma asks Wanner and Keijimaru to help them track her down again, and Keijimaru is more than happy to help, but Wanner wants to go home. Meanwhile, back at ARMS, Quinn has figured out that the worm user is really Aki's sister, but it makes no sense to him since records clearly show that Fubuki should be dead, and that aside, why would she only choose to show up now of all times? Just then, Algis shows up behind Quinn and tells him that Amaryllis made an appearance because she is after Hikaru's arbitrium. Quinn is shocked that Algis has been standing behind him this entire time, but even more so because Algis already knows about Amaryllis. Algis explains that Amaryllis came out of hiding when she figured out that Alma had been awakened, so he was trying to take care of it in secret before it became a major issue. He didn't think Aki would be able to handle the truth if she found out that her dead sister was being puppeteered by Amaryllis, but his secrecy ended up driving Aki to the point where Amaryllis could manipulate her. Back with Aki and Amaryllis, Amaryllis is frustrated that Aki didn't bring Hikaru to her after all the trouble she went through to play the part of Aki's sister. She drops the act and decides that she's just going to get rid of Aki with her puppets. Aki is starting to realize that the real Fubuki would never act this way, and Amaryllis calls her an idiot for taking this long to figure it out. Amaryllis attacks Aki using her puppets, and Aki defends herself pretty well, but then Amaryllis begins acting like Fubuki again to catch Aki off guard, and while Aki is distracted, Amaryllis grabs and restrains. Amaryllis had intended to stick with Fubuki's body as her host for a little while longer, but since she has Aki here, she might as well take her body too. Stennis and Dex grab Amaryllis, but Amaryllis knows Aki won't let them destroy her since it would mean hurting Fubuki as well. In fact, this is just like the time when she first took over Fubuki's body because Aki and Fubuki's parents were desperately trying to get her to release their daughter, but there was no way Amaryllis was going to give up such a good puppet, so she killed Fubuki's parents with her own two hands. After hearing this, Aki is devastated and Amaryllis is about to finish her off so she can take over her body, but at the last second, Hikaru and Jun come crashing through the window and knock Amaryllis down. Aki yells at Hikaru for coming here when he knows Amaryllis is after him, but he says he doesn't care about the danger because he is here to save his friend. Now that her main target is in the room, Amaryllis gets up and tries to grab Hikaru, but Jun stops her and says he's not letting anyone aside from him lay a hand on Hikaru. Aki tries to get Jun to stop so he doesn't hurt Fubuki, but Jun doesn't give a damn about Fubuki's well-being. He's just here to make sure that Amaryllis doesn't kill Hikaru. Just then, Amaryllis grabs Jun and tosses him aside so she can get to Hikaru, but Jun still refuses to let go and uses his mecha to retrain her. Amaryllis finds it amusing that Jun thinks he can beat her with an artificial mecha that's basically a knockoff of her, although she thinks it's fitting that a failure like him has such a mecha. June is offended, but before he can say anything, Amaryllis covers his mouth and resumes her attack on Hikaru. Alma blocks the strike, but for some reason, he can feel power leaving his body every time Amaryllis hits him. It's going to be difficult to fight if Amaryllis can absorb their power in the process, so Aki steps in front of Hikaru to defend him. Amaryllis asks her if she still thinks she's fit to act as Hikaru's bodyguard after everything she's done, but Aki isn't protecting Hikaru because she's his bodyguard right now. She protects him because she cares about him. That's all well and good, but the fact of the matter is that as long as Amaryllis has Fubuki's body, Aki won't be able to hurt her without the risk of killing her sister, and that makes her pretty much useless in this fight. Aki gets captured, so Hikaru is left to fend for himself, and he is holding his ground pretty well, but then Amaryllis starts using Aki as a human shield. This keeps Hikaru distracted long enough for Amaryllis to stab him with one of her tentacles, and once she's inside him, she begins sucking him dry of as much Arbitrium as she can. Just as she suspected, Hikaru has the same incredible Arbitrium from 100 years ago, and as she says this, Alma feels like something significant happened 100 years ago. After seeing the confused look Alma has, Amaryllis realizes that the rumors about him losing his memories must have been true, and for some reason that pisses her off, so she stabs Hikaru some more. Since Amaryllis has finally gotten her hands on Hikaru's Arbitrium, she doesn't really need Aki anymore, so she plans to get rid of her by strangling her to death. But as Aki pleads for help, Hikaru's body responds and begins overflowing with Arbitrium. Amaryllis is overjoyed by this, since this is more Arbitrium than she has ever had, but then Hikaru and Alma keep charging the Arbitrium, so it starts overloading her systems. While Amaryllis is distracted by the Arbitrium overload, Hikaru and Alma free Aki from her hold, and as they do so, there's a massive flash of light. When the dust finally settles, Hikaru, Aki, and June are all on the ground together, and they are not sure about what just happened, but something June is certain about is that he will make Amaryllis pay for what she said to him. He gets up and grabs Amaryllis with his mecha and begins trying to rip her out of Fubuki's body, and while Amaryllis tried to stop him, June is motivated by pure spite, so he finds the strength to overpower her and separate Amaryllis from Fubuki. Once Fubuki is free, she regains control of her body, and Aki is really relieved to see that her sister is alright, but while Amaryllis may have been separated from her primary host, she still has all the rest of her puppets at her disposal and tries to use them to capture Aki. However, now that Amaryllis can't use Fubuki as a human shield, it's pretty easy for Aki to fight back against her. Hikaru then takes over from there, and with the help of Alma, they are finally able to defeat Amaryllis. But before she is destroyed, the last thing she says is that it's Alma's fault that she turned out this way because he caused Yakumo Kagami's death. The next morning, things go back to the way they usually are, with Aki busting through Hikaru's newly repaired window, and the two of them heading to school together. On the way to school, Aki apologizes to Hikaru for causing him so much trouble, but Hikaru tells her she doesn't need to worry about it since that's what friends are for. They help each other out in times of need. In that case, Aki says she has another favor she would like to ask of him. She wants him to help her study, which seems like a simple request, but he doesn't understand why she would want to study now since she already missed all the tests. Aki explains that she wants to study so she can help Fubuki catch up on the past 8 years of school that she missed once she has recovered. Right now, Fubuki is in physical therapy to get used to her body again, and ARMS is taking good care of her, so Aki has decided to stick with the organization. And as such, she promises to continue guarding Hikaru 24 hours a day, and while Hikaru is glad to have Aki around again, he tells her she doesn't have to follow him around that much. Meanwhile, over at the Kagami Group Research Lab, they have finally finished construction of a gate that will lead to the Mecha Yude world, and once they get there, they can take control of all the mechas that are still dormant. However, to power the gate, they are going to need the Ordella, and the only thing that can activate the Ordella is Alma, so they intend to use everything at their disposal to capture him. The following day on the way to school, Hikaru's friends are watching him from behind a corner because two really suspicious people just showed up and started hassling him and Aki. The two people are actually ARMS agents, and they were sent here as additional bodyguards for Hikaru, since Aki hasn't had much success keeping him safe. Aki has no right to refuse their help since this order came directly from ARMS. Coincidentally, Kazuha happens to be nearby, and after failing to make any progress on capturing Hikaru, he was stripped of his mecha and got demoted to security guard duty. However, once he notices Hikaru, he thinks this is his chance to regain his honor. So he tries to arrest him, but before he can do that, Aki grabs Hikaru's hand and jumps off the bridge with him onto the back of a moving truck. The truck driver apparently didn't hear the sound of two teenagers landing on his truck, so he just kept driving with Hikaru and Aki on top, and Hikaru is really disappointed that his day is starting out like this. Alma apologizes for ruining Hikaru's normal life, but Hikaru tells him he has nothing to be sorry about because they are in this together, so no matter what craziness comes their way, they'll overcome it together. At least until Alma can get his memories back anyway. Speaking of Alma's memories, there's something Alma has been meaning to tell Hikaru, but before he could say anything, he was interrupted by Sinus and Dex, who are in the middle of a deep philosophical debate about whether honey or jam is better. They are trying to make breakfast for Hikaru and Aki before this truck gets to school, but Hikaru points out that the truck is driving in the opposite direction from their school. Come to think of it, he has no idea where this truck is actually going, and all of a sudden the truck stops as the driver gets knocked out by a blow dart. Some members of the Kagami group have come to capture Hikaru, including the 3rd Division head, a goth Luida, and a new guy. The 3rd Division head really doesn't want to have to be here, so he tells his subordinates to get this over with quickly. And that's all the Luida needed to hear because she starts firing dozens of spikes at Hikaru with her shackled Mecha-U machine gun. Aki takes Hikaru and ducks behind the truck as the Luida fires into it, and there's no way the truck driver is surviving this, but for now, Aki tells Hikaru to leave this to her and head to school so he doesn't get marked absent. Hikaru agrees and starts running away, but Kazuha comes up from behind and blocks his path. While all this is going on, Oyama and Kayano are being held down by Hikaru's friends due to a misunderstanding, so those two aren't going to be of much help anytime soon. Kazuha says he intends to capture Hikaru to make up for his mistakes, but then the 3rd Division new guy interrupts him and climbs on the truck, saying he will handle the capture of Hikaru from here. However, as he moves to attack, Kazuha notices that the new guy's mecha is the same one that was taken from him when he got demoted, and he wants it back really bad, so just before the new guy gets to Hikaru, he attacks the new guy and starts wrestling with him to get his mecha back. With all the chaos going on around them, Aki reminds Hikaru that he needs to head to school, so he starts running again, but this time his path gets blocked by the unconscious body of the new guy. So he turns around and finds that Kazuha has gotten his mecha back, so now he has to deal with him. In the meantime, Aki sneaks up on the Luida and tries to take her down, but she manages to get out of the way in time and nearly lines up the perfect shot to take Aki out with her minigun, but she accidentally jumps backwards into Kazuha and knocks him over. She yells at him for getting in her way, but Kazuha yells back at her for bumping into him with her edgy eye patch. Once she gets off him, he goes back to attacking Hikaru, but Hikaru jumps up to avoid it, and while in the air, he and Alma go into battle mode together. Kazuha tries attacking again with his whip, but Hikaru and Alma dodge and grab a hold of the chain before flinging Kazuha straight into the Luida and knocking them both down. She looks really embarrassed now that Kazuha is sitting on her, and while the two of them are dealing with the awkward situation, Aki sneaks up from behind and knocks them both out. And upon seeing his team get beaten, the division head decides he has done enough work, so he clocks out for the day and asks Tuz to pick up the new guy in Luida if she gets the chance, because he doesn't really care if they get captured or not. At the same time, Aki and Hikaru are in the process of tying everyone up, and Alma says he has something important to tell Hikaru, but before he could say it, Aki called him over and asked for help because she got herself tangled up pretty badly. Unfortunately, while Hikaru is trying to get her untied, Kazuha gets back on his feet and tries to give him a back shot, but Alma notices in time and blocks it. However, that doesn't stop Hikaru from falling over and knocking himself out. Once he finally wakes up, everything has been taken care of and the Kagami group members have been restrained, but Alma feels terrible because he let Hikaru get hurt. Hikaru tries assuring him that it wasn't his fault, but Alma firmly believes that Hikaru would be better off without him and says he does not want someone else getting hurt because of him. Hikaru realizes that Alma just sent someone else, so he asks if Alma might have recovered his memories, and it is confirmed. Hikaru thinks this is a good thing, but Alma reveals that he has had his memories back ever since the fight with Amaryllis, and Hikaru is a bit confused, so he asks why Alma kept it secret until now. Alma doesn't know what to say, so he tells Hikaru he doesn't need to get himself involved and starts crawling away. Normally, Aki would chase after Alma to keep him safe, but she thinks there's no need since Alma can't get more than 5 meters away from Hikaru without losing power. The only problem is he's not losing power and he's really fast for an arm, so Hikaru and Aki quickly lose track of him. Back at arms, Aljus informs Hikaru that Alma must have regained his memories after coming in contact with Amaryllis, and as for how he can move on his own, Fist informs everyone that Alma used to have a special ability to produce his own Arbitrium, and that ability has likely returned now that he has his memories back. This is the first time anyone here has heard of this, so they ask why they weren't debriefed about such an important thing, but Fist has a good reason for keeping it secret since they had worried that discussing Alma's traumatic memories prematurely might have caused him to become inactive again. In any case, they need to locate Alma, so Aljus tells everyone to be on the lookout for him. However, when Hikaru says he wants to help, All just tells him that since Alma can move on his own now, Hikaru is no longer needed, so he doesn't need to get involved anymore. Both Hikaru and Kwon are a bit shocked upon hearing Algis say this, but Kwon says this is a good thing since it means Hikaru can go back to his ordinary life, but Hikaru refuses to accept that. They can't just expect him to go back to being a civilian after everything he has been through with Alma. Since Hikaru is being so insistent, Algis and Fisk relent and decide to tell him the whole truth. Back on the Mecha Yude world, they had almost completely depleted the planet's supply of Arbitrium, so all the Mecha Yudes were on the verge of extinction. Alma, Fisk, and another companion all set out together in an attempt to find the legendary Ordello, which could restore their home world, but along the way they all became inactive due to a lack of energy. Luckily, they managed to arrive on Earth before that happened, and on the night of their arrival, Yakumo Kagami happened to be nearby, so as he noticed a bright light coming from his family's mines, he went down to investigate, and that's when he came across Alma. However, shortly after that, a cave-in occurred which would have almost certainly killed Yakumo if he was alone, but he luckily fused with Alma and got out of there in time. Fisk fused with Yakumo's older brother, Tsukihiko, and Tsukihiko seemed to have a disease that was related to Arbitrium, so he agreed to join the Mecha Yude in their search for Ordella so he could find a cure for himself, and Yakumo also agreed to help since it sounded like a lot of fun. They all began searching for Ordella together, and after finally finding it, they began their research in an attempt to activate it. Several more days passed after that, and eventually, the time has come for all their research to bear fruit, but Yakumo felt uneasy about this whole plan since everything was going way too smoothly. Tsukihiko understood Yakumo's worries, but he assured him that all the test values they received were within their expectations, so nothing could possibly go wrong. The next day, while they were in the middle of the process of awakening Ordella, something went horribly wrong. Tsukihiko had done all the tests necessary to awaken Ordella, but he never stopped to consider what would happen once Ordella was awakened, because it was powerful, but not very friendly. It instantly knocks Tsukihiko and Fisk out and injures Yakumo, so Alma was the only one left unharmed, and he was really worried because he had no idea what to do against something as powerful as that. But Yakumo wasn't going to let a little fatal head wound get in the way of helping a friend, so he calms Alma down and tells him they'll get through this together. They go into battle mode, and he may have said they could deal with it, but Ordella is really tough, so getting close to it isn't going to be easy. They are going to have to get creative if they want to get within striking distance, so Yakumo strikes the ground and sends chunks of rock flying everywhere to distract Ordella. And while I was dealing with the rocks, Yakumo and Alma closed in on it from above before landing a punch that finally resealed Ordella. They may have succeeded, but Yakumo's not looking too good, and in fact, he straight up dies a few moments later. Due to the trauma of losing his dear friend, Alma became inactive and never woke up again until he met Hikaru. But now that he remembers his past, he can't let Hikaru end up dead because of him, so he's trying to get as far away from him as possible. However, as Alma is crawling into an alley, he ends up running into Jun, and the second Jun sees that Alma is on his own, he grabs him and tries to fuse. But it just doesn't working no matter how hard he tries. Jun accepts that maybe he's just not good enough to fuse with Alma yet, and he's fine with that for now. But he notices that Alma is looking all sad and stuff, so he asks him what happened. At the same time, Hikaru is standing at the edge of a bridge and he looks really sad as well when all of a sudden he receives a call from Jun. But when he answers the phone, he hears Alma's voice. Alma begins talking about the first day he met Hikaru, and how despite not knowing who or what Alma was, Hikaru still chose to help him. Alma knows Hikaru is an extremely kind person, but he can't allow himself to take advantage of Hikaru's kindness any longer. He is capable of moving on his own now, so he wants Hikaru to go back to the way things were before they met and enjoy his normal life. Hikaru doesn't understand why Alma is saying all this, so he tries to talk some sense into him, but Alma has already made his decision and hangs up. He plans to stick with Jun for a while, but the second Jun walks out of the alleyway, Todo shows up and doesn't look like he's here for a friendly chat. Back on the bridge, Hikaru is still contemplating the meaning of his life when Aki shows up to ask if he found Alma yet. Hikaru tells her that there is no point in searching for Alma anymore because Alma doesn't need him, but he gets cut off by Aki as she punches him in the face. She apologizes for hitting him so hard since she was trying to hold back, but she can't bear to listen to him say that. Alma is only acting this way because he is haunted by his past, and Aki knows what it feels like to be overcome with guilt from the past, so also knows that Alma needs someone by his side right now. And even if Hikaru thinks Alma doesn't need him, Aki still does, so she wants him to help her bring Alma back. Hikaru realizes she's right, so he agrees to go look for Alma, but all of a sudden, Aki receives a call from ARMS HQ, because they just received word that Alma has been captured by the Kagami group, and they are about to use him to unseal Ordella. This was the end of episode 7. Subscribe to not miss the next part.